This video is a breakdown of federal taxes in the US and how Uncle Sam spends your money and how much of it he gets. So let's start by looking at the US federal budget. And in 2023, the US federal budget was around $6.1 trillion. And now that's a lot of money. Let's go ahead and break down where they got all that from. So 49% of the US federal budget comes from the federal income tax. 24% comes from the Social Security tax. 10% comes from the Medicare tax, 9% from corporate taxes, and then there's a bunch of other smaller taxes that total up to be around 8%. So look at that again, half of the federal budget comes from the federal income tax. But what do they spend the federal budget on? So let's take a look at the 2023 federal budget and where they spent this $6.1 trillion. So 26% was spent on healthcare, 22% was spent on Social Security, 14% was spent on the U.S. military, and this part's crazy right here, 13% was spent on national debt payments. So national debt payments and military are almost equal now. 9% is spent on income security programs, and then there's a bunch of other smaller expenditures that total up to be 9%. So that is a breakdown of the U.S. federal budget, where they get the money and how they spend it. And now let's focus on calculating how much you will pay. And the U.S. federal tax system is a progressive tax system, meaning the more you make, the more you pay. So here's the 2024 federal tax bracket. So for year 2024, this is how you would be taxed based on if you're a single filer, married filing jointly, or head of household. And this is a good little snapshot, but I think a better breakdown, if you're to truly understand how federal income tax in the U.S. works, is to give this picture right here. And this is going to be for a single filer that made $75,000 of taxable income. We're going to break down how this would be taxed. So $75,000, which means it falls into the 22% tax bracket. And you might think, oh, this is easy enough. You're just going to go 75,000 times 22%. And that's going to give you $16,500 that you'd pay in federal taxes. However, this is actually wrong. It is not how taxes work at the federal level. You are actually taxed in chunks. And let's take a look at what that means right here. So let's look at this problem again, $75,000 of taxable income. It's going to fall in this bracket right here. But what this means is you are not going to be taxed past this point. 22% is the most you'll see your money taxed. And it's actually going to start all the way at the first bracket. So you're going to take your $75,000, and of that, the first bracket goes from any money from 0 to $11,600 right here is taxed at 10%. So you're going to go all the way to the max there. $11,600 is going to be taxed at 10%. So then you go $75,000 minus the $11,600, and that's going to give you $63,400 left of money that's going to be taxed. The second bracket is at 12%. And any money from $11,601 to $47,150 is going to be taxed. So this is $63,000. That's going to be all $35,550 of that will be taxed at 12%. And you're just going to subtract that number from $63,400. It's going to give you $27,850 left. And remember, we're not going to get taxed more than this. So all $27,850 of that is going to be taxed at this 22% tax bracket right here. So now we have everything that we need, and now we're actually going to calculate how much this is for each of those numbers. So start off, 11,600 will get taxed at 10%. So do that, times it by 0.10, and that's going to give you 1,160. Now move on to the next bracket, 35,550 tax at 12%, and that's going to come out to 4,266. Then you're going to have the rest of it, 27,850. Going to be taxed at the 22% level, and that's going to give you $6,127. And now you're going to add all these up, and that's going to give you $11,553 total that you will be taxed on at the federal level from $75,000 of taxable income. And let's figure out what tax rate that is. We're just going to divide that number by $75,000. That's going to give us 0.154, which we know is going to be a 15.4% tax rate. Not a 22%, which your brain kind of automatically goes to. Let's take a look at one more example. Let's say a bigger income here. We're going to look at a single filer that made $115,000 of taxable income. So that's going to fall into the 24% range here. But remember, that just means that's as far as we will go. We will not be taxed past this point, but we're going to start all the way at the beginning. So of that $115,000, Like we said, 11,600 will be taxed at 10%. And then we're going to subtract that. That means there's 103,400 left. And so of that, we know that there's going to be 35,550 that's taxed at the 12% range. Then we're going to subtract that number. That's going to give us 67,850. And so the range here is going to be from 47,150 to 100,525. So that range is going to be right here, $53,375 to fill up all the bracket. That's going to be taxed at 22%. So you're going to subtract that from 67,850. So there's 14,475 left. And remember, this is the furthest that it will go. So we know that the rest of that is going to be taxed at 24%. So now that we have everything matched up, again, now you're just going to find each bracket's range, and then you're going to add them up. So 11,600 times 10%. Again, it's the same as the last one, 1,160. 35,550 times 12% is going to give us 4,266. Then we have 53,375 times 22%, and that's going to give us 11,742. And then the rest, 14,475, is going to be at that 24% level. That's going to give us 3,474. Now we know what to do. We add them all up, and that's going to give us $20,642 tax at the federal level. Let's find what tax rate that is. So we're going to divide that by our original amount, and that's going to give us 0.179, which we know is going to be a 17.9% tax rate, not 24%, which again is what most people think. And so that's a general overall view of how the federal income tax works in the US. And here's a quick reminder to take it easy.